afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DogCatFox and Friend. I'm Scribelight, and he's DogCatFox.
Wowie, wow, wow.
And we're here to bring you the news of the week that you may not have heard, or have already heard, but from my perspective, because it's much more valuable than everybody else's. That's what I tell myself. I mean, my mom thinks I'm cool. But anyway, who's joining us on this beautiful Saturday afternoon? Shady Grin, good afternoon. Random American, hello. Shio Gorath, hello. The Alexander, good afternoon. You changed your avatar. It's all very dark and mysterious now. Ooh. Mike R, good afternoon. Cameraman J, hello. Your internet's favorite lunatic, hello. Who else is here? Pip Bin. Pip Bin, that's a name I haven't said in a long time. Holy cats. Pip Bin, how are you? Hope you're doing good. Welcome to the show. Blue-Eyed Scream, hello. JB, hello. Juliet, good afternoon. Mike Savage, Blarg. Unfair Ophelia, hello. Robert Pincus, hello. And JPS, good afternoon. If there's anybody else lurking or in the future, good afternoon. And if you're here, do make yourself known. Frankie Delar. Is it Delar or Deller? Or something else? Delar? Deller. Let me know. Tomato. Toot Sweet. Hello. Otho May. Good afternoon. And I think that's everyone. If I missed... Oh, Advocatus Diaboli. Good afternoon. Della. Oh, the R is silent. Frankie Della. Okay. I will attempt to remember. The silent R. Well, yes, everyone, we are on another Saturday. I had not planned on being here this Saturday. Originally, the plan was to go up and visit our folks, Sister Scribe and I, but that was pushed back to next week. I think my dad was having some medical things happen this week, and he figured he would not have the energy for a visit, so hopefully next week will be just fine for that. So next Saturday, I shouldn't be here, but I will probably do a Sunday stream in apology, as it were. But let's get into the news, shall we? Did you guys know that cultural appropriation is a sin? I know you knew, because you probably lived longer than the last 10 years or so. But it's back. I hadn't really heard it being quoted or mentioned for quite a while, but hey, it's come roaring back in two different instances with two different celebrities. Now, we talked a little bit about this on Midnight's Edge in the Morning yesterday, but I thought I would go through a little bit more myself. Danny Boyle says he could not make Slumdog Millionaire today due to cultural appropriation. And, quote, that's how it should be. I'd want a young Indian filmmaker to shoot it. Okay. Danny Boyle admitted to The Guardian on his press tour for 28 years later that he would not even think about making his Oscar-winning Slumdog Millionaire today. Citing cultural appropriation concerns, Boyle noted that he'd be, quote, looking for a young Indian filmmaker to direct, quote, Slumdog Millionaire if he was developing the project in 2025. Quote, we wouldn't be able to make that now, Boyle said, and that's how it should be. It's time to reflect on all that. We have to look at the cultural baggage we carry and the mark that we've left on the world, unquote. Consequently, Danny Boyle gave back his Oscar, tallied up all the money that he made from making the film, and the residual cents, and he donated it all to an Indian film school. Oh wait, no, he didn't do that. When asked if Slumdog Millionaire was a form of colonialism, Boyle responded, no. Well, only in the sense that everything is. I mean, no. It's not at all colonial. I mean, everything is, so it is, it was, still, I'm still making money off it. At the time, it felt radical. Like skateboarding? Radical. We made the decision that only a handful of us would go to Mumbai. We'd work with a big Indian crew and try to make a film within the culture, but you're still an outsider. It's still a flawed method. Yes, as we know, only like shall create creativity of like. Kiefer Dan, thank you so much. Hi, Scribe and Chat. I thought you weren't streaming tonight. Well, like I said earlier in the week, I hadn't planned on being streaming today, but plans changed, so it'll be next Saturday. Next Saturday will be, granted that the plans stick for next Saturday too, because my dad could call us up and say, I don't feel well enough to visit next Saturday. So here we are. But no, you didn't miss anything. I think I mentioned it on TED Excellence. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it on the oddball Twitch stream I did the other day. But either way. So yes, this is the way it is. Let's see. Quote, that kind of cultural appropriation might be sanctioned at certain times. When? You see, here's the thing. Either you're not allowed to do it, or you shouldn't do it, or you can do it. What certain times is cultural appropriation sanctioned? I mean, you're setting the rules, Danny Boyle. You've just said that your own Oscar-winning film was a cultural crime. So who gets to pass judgment on anybody else making such a decision? That kind of cultural appropriation might be sanctioned at certain times, but at other times it cannot be, he concluded. And then he went on. That's not a conclusion. Quote, I mean, I'm proud of the film, but you wouldn't even contemplate doing something like that today. Speak for yourself. It wouldn't even get financed. Even if I was involved, I'd be looking for a young Indian filmmaker to shoot it. Unquote. So does that mean that every other non-Indian person who worked on that film has to be likewise apologetic for their work on it? Or they have to feel ashamed of it? And if you really do feel ashamed of it, then why keep it on your resume? It's nonsense. Creative segregation. You shall only be involved creatively in things that you can draw a direct bloodline or cultural connection to. If you cannot do that in any reasonable way, then you're not allowed to participate. Right? So no non-Indian person should have worked on that film at all. Not just hiring an Indian filmmaker, but the entire cast, crew, writing, everybody involved, all the way up to all the people making money off of it, have to be the correct culture and or ethnicity, correct? I mean, either this goes all the way or it doesn't make any sense. And if that's how the world is supposed to work, well, it's going to become very boring very quickly. I've mentioned before, I'm currently working on a sort of private personal project that involves vampires. But I'm not Romanian. I have absolutely no bloodline connection to Romania or the Carpathians or anything else. So obviously I can't do that, right? That's cultural appropriation. I'm stealing. I'm stealing from Vlad the Impaler's bloodline and Bram Stoker's estate or something, I guess. Right? No. It's silly. It's just as silly as how often we've seen people say, "Oh, students in schools can only benefit from having being taught by a teacher who looks like them." That's really the only way that anybody learns anything. Because someone outside of a particular culture or genre or something couldn't possibly bring something new or a different perspective to a story that they don't necessarily have a lifetime's connection to. Like, I don't know, Slumdog Millionaire, an Oscar-winning film about Indian culture directed by a Brit, which everybody hated. Now, here's the question I asked on Midnight Eds in the Morning, and I don't know what the answer to this question is still, but I have to ask, did anyone from India or anyone from Indian culture who saw Slumdog Millionaire, did they immediately feel offended by the story, the portrayal, etc. of the content of the film? I mean, I bet somebody did, but was that the overall feeling? I'd really like to know. What's this? This stream is false advertisement. DogCatFox isn't the one hosting the stream. Josh, do you know the range of vocabulary possessed by DogCatFox? You've been around long enough. Do you really think DogCatFox could do... Could you do this show? Could you read this article? Wowie, wow, wow. Well, I know you could read it. I mean, like, read it out loud in English and then give coherent commentary. Wowie, wow, wow. Okay. I mean, coherent as in, yes, people could understand you're saying wowie, wow, wow, but like that doesn't tell anybody anything. It just... You can say you're like Groot. That's it. That's all you've got. Wowie, wow, wow. Okay, pausing between the words doesn't... Just sit. Stop looking at me. You're a gimmick, okay? You're a gimmick. You're a mascot. Be happy with that. Good gravy. I tell you what, you name a show after somebody and they get all nippy at you. Come on. Jeez Louise. Anyway. Well, I got somebody staring at me. Anyway, this is just the first of two recent, resurrections of cultural appropriation in our world. Would you like to see the second? Because it really only came out earlier today that I saw. Because Amy Poehler. You remember Amy Poehler, don't you? I don't. I never watched, what was she on, Parks and Rec or something? I've never seen an episode of that show. But anyway, Amy Poehler says Saturday Night Live actors, quote, all played people we should not have. I misappropriated. I appropriated. Everything in comedy has an expiration date. Well, then, maybe you should get out of the business. Thank you, Faustonia. Heh. That pause made me wonder which way Scribe was going to go with that last critique. So good. Which last critique? With DogCatFox? Yeah, I was trying to choose my words carefully there. I didn't want to offend anybody, by calling him a mutt, because that would only be 1/3 of the equation. Also, Professor R2, hello. Snot, hello. If ever there was a good name for like a WWE wrestler, Snot. Right up there with Puke, although Puke has a very tragic real-life story attached to him, so careful about Puke. And Simon Willikins, hello. Meh, good afternoon. And the Dead Man, hello. Yes, so anyway, Amy Poehler recently took accountability for her problematic Saturday Night Live characters while talking to former cast member Will Forte on her Good Hang podcast. I've honestly never heard of it. Poehler said that every comedian who has appeared on SNL over the years has, quote, played people that we should not have played. And, quote, the part about getting older and being in comedy is you have to, figure out, oh, it's like everything has an expiration date, unquote. Well, why not just avoid the embarrassment and get out of comedy? Or maybe stop apologizing for yourself and underscore the fact that it was all a joke. Quote, there was even on SNL 50 when they had that segment which was like, here's all the ways we got things wrong. And they showed way inappropriate casting for people, Poehler added. Quote, we all played people that we should not have played. I misappropriated. I appropriated. I didn't know, unquote. It's all a joke. It's all a joke. Yes, I'll admit some things don't age well. But it's like, you shrug your shoulders and you go, it was funny at the time, move on. If you're going to wall in self-wretchedness and apologetics, grow up. Poehler was referring to the Saturday Night Live 50 sketch in which Tom Hanks introduced an in memoriam segment calling out the many problematic jokes and sketches SNL has aired. The montage of poorly aged bits includes jokes about sexual harassment. You mean jokes about sexual? Okay. And such infamous moments as Adrian Brody sporting dreadlocks and a Jamaican accent. Yeah, because it's comedy. Oh no. Quote, even though these characters' accents and, let's just call them, ethnic wigs were unquestionably in poor taste, you all laughed at them, Tom Hanks said in a winking moment at the audience. Yeah, it's called jokes and comedy. Quote, so if anyone should be canceled, shouldn't it be you, the audience? Something to think about. Yeah, well, that too was a joke. Yeah, but Amy Poehler isn't making light of it. She's being serious, I guess. Speaking to Forte on her podcast, Poehler added, quote, the best thing you can do is make repairs. Learn from your mistakes. Do better. It's all you can do. No, Amy. Amy, here's what you can do. You profited off of cultural appropriation, misappropriation. You profited off of hate and bigotry. Amy Poehler, you need to tally up all of your earnings from Saturday Night Live and donate them to, how about the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society? Everybody, you can be like Amy Poehler should be and donate to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Link is at the top of the chat box. Click on that link. If you can donate, please do so. But even if you can't, if you can share that out on social media, that would be appreciated. And if you donate to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, you will be slightly better a person than Amy Poehler. At least in my eyes. And DogCatFox's eyes, right, DogCatFox? Right, DogCatFox? What are you doing? What are you writing? You're on strike? What? Wow. But you don't do anything. Strike? Okay, don't even try it. Don't even think about like starting a union or something. You're one genetically modified thing. Wow. Okay. You're not a thing, but Jeez. What is it with you today? Did you get into my Monster energy drinks or something? Like, just take a break, okay? Just go over there. Yes, I'm telling you. God, dang it. Anyway, okay, so there's Amy Poehler. How exciting was that? I don't know. How exciting was that? Why does it keep adding this giant circle every time I click out of an article? It's like I either get this giant circle or I get back to the regular circle. Why can't I just have this? I prefer to have a smaller, even smaller than this circle around my avatar, but it always defaults to this gigantic circle around my avatar unless I click another button. I don't understand that. Anyway, Juliet, Scribe, is he over hot and needs a cool down? He is overheated, but not because of the ambient temperature here on the moon. It's all fairly well taken care of. Yeah, he needs to go in the corner and have a timeout. He drew a "I'm on strike" sign, except it didn't say "I'm on strike." It just said "Wowie wow." But I read DogCatFox. Faustonia, thank you so much again. Holy cow. The art is incomplete at best if it doesn't even mention the article, is incomplete at best if it doesn't even mention the infamous racist skit of Chevy Chase and Richard Pryor, an SNL skit for the ages, a far better skit than I can even remember Poehler doing. Was that Richard Pryor? Hold on. Was that Richard Pryor or Dick Gregory? I mean, I'm happy to if it was Richard Pryor, that's great. But was that Richard Pryor or Dick Gregory? Because Dick Gregory, I seem to remember Dick Gregory did something on Saturday Night Live that was similar to that. But I mean, if it was Richard Pryor, I'm happy to be made in hell. It was Richard Pryor. Okay, because in my mind's eye, for some reason, I thought I could have sworn I saw Dick Gregory do something similar to that on Saturday Night Live or something. Anyway, sorry, I just got my memory and my brain went off on a tangent there for a second. But thank you, Faustonia. Yes, I do remember the skit. For some reason, I'd replaced Richard Pryor with Dick Gregory. But either way, yeah, that was very controversial. And yet, everything that Richard Pryor was saying would not nearly be as controversial as what Chevy Chase was saying, which was kind of the point. Bloodstream, who did the Ebony and Ivory skit? I don't know. Pryor's delivery of dead honky. That's right. Okay, now I see. Okay, yes. Okay. Clarity has been visited upon me. Yes, Richard Pryor. Okay. That was my mistake. But, Mainhell, Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory was another black comedian and author and activist, I think, at the time. And he was on, I don't know if he was he a regular on Saturday Night Live, or was he like a frequent guest or something? This is reaching back long before my time. Anyway, never mind me. Thank you, Faustonia, and yes, you're very much correct. That skit, I'll have to watch it again to refresh my memory. But yeah, so there's cultural appropriation, everybody. I hadn't seriously seen that talked about since, I want to say 2018. It kind of died on the vine sometime around then. And then more serious things took over people's attentions. But thanks to Danny Boyle and Polar, we're back into it, I guess. And yeah, cultural appropriation is nonsense. I brought up this, for those of you that listen to Midnight's Edge in the morning, I apologize. I'm going to bring up this one more anecdote for the sake of underscoring it. I had the experience way back in my Facebook days. This would have been 2014, 2015 or something. There was a controversy at the time, you can probably still look it up, involving J.K. Rowling, which had nothing to do with trans anything, but had to do with the material she was using to write her books. She had written a book that had come out at the time. I think it was one of the first Fantastic Beast books. Anyway, in this book, in this little offshoot of the magical world of Harry Potter that she was creating, she had cited Native American mythology. I think it was skinwalkers or something. But either way, it was a uproar occurred because how dare J.K. Rowling, a Brit, make use of Native American mythology in her book. Oh, she has nothing to do with Native American mythology. She's not Native American. She's not even American. How dare she do this? And some people in my social group on Facebook were getting all up in arms about this. And I made the same point back then that I made now. It's like, well, you know, I can't write about vampires because I'm not Romanian. And one of my friends, former friends now, he made this long post talking about how terrible it was that she did this and she had no right to do this and so on. And I asked, well, why does she not have a right to do this? You know, I mean, obviously she can't make herself Native American, so what could she do that would satisfy you? And he said, well, she didn't do enough research in order to appropriately make use of this information. And I said, okay, well, let's say for the sake of argument that J.K. Rowling did all the research you can imagine, right? She looked up Native American folklore, and she talked to experts in Native American mythology, and she read every reasonable expert book you could think of. I mean, whatever. Just imagine that she did absolutely every bit of research that would satisfy you. Okay, now that you've imagined that the book came out exactly the same way now as it would have if she'd done the research. What would you say then? And wouldn't you believe it? Immediately move the goalpost. Well, she should have consulted with Native American tribes themselves and gotten permission and et cetera, so forth. And I said, okay, we can go through this infinite regression of things. Let's say she went off to the tribal elders of every involved tribe in this piece of mythology, and she talked to them, and she told them what she was going to do with their book, and she got a signed certificate from each tribal elder saying that they give their permission, and she did all the research you can imagine, and it came out exactly the same way in the book. What would you say then? It was, yeah, so it's ridiculous. Ridiculous. You know, judge a piece of art on its own merits. You know, if there was also this movement, and we talked about it several times on my streams when it comes to education, how we need to read authors of color and so on. Just without any other qualification. We just need to read authors of color. And I'm like, you know, I would bet that most of the authors whose books I've loved over the course of my life, I could not even conceptualize what they look like. I mean, like, unless it's like Stephen King or someone famous, like, I don't even know what the authors of the books that I've liked look like. What does it matter what they look like? Why should I value what they look like in relation to whether or not I enjoy a piece of art that they've produced? Again, creative segregation, cultural segregation. That's all cultural appropriation is attempting to push. Cultural segregation. JB, thank you so much. Holy cow. The Human Condition is a great series of movies, and it was extremely controversial for its time, mainly because it didn't paint the Japanese military in a good light, World War II being a few decades before. I can't say that I've ever seen it. The Human Condition. All right. Well, I mean, the Japanese military, I mean, obviously, at the time of World War II, they weren't very popular in America. That's for sure. Yeah. No, there's lots of things that people find offensive or controversial. Grow up. And when it comes to art or comedy or drama or horror, you know, or entertainment in general, if you don't like something, don't watch it. If you don't enjoy it, you don't enjoy it. If you're critical of it, say your piece. It's fine. You know, I've had more than a few little tit for tats on the intertubes the last few days over the Thunderbolts, because the director of the Thunderbolts apparently has gotten the job to direct the X-Men, which I think is going to be an absolute disaster. Because the guy who directed the Thunderbolts was a lead cause of what went into that movie and making it terrible as far as I'm concerned. But boy, oh boy, there's a whole contingent out there that loves the Thunderbolts and thought it was a great movie. Like, great. I'm glad you like it. I'm sorry you're wrong, but I'm glad you liked it. Thank you again, JB. It's based on some real-life experiences of the director, such as refusing promotion as a means of peaceful protest when working in occupied Manchuria. Oh boy. Okay, now I'm going to have to look this up. You've caused me to become curious, JB. The Human Condition. I'm surprised. It doesn't ring a bell. You know, I used to watch all types of World War II stuff when I was younger. You know, History Channel type things, Why We Fight, that kind of stuff. You know, very documentarian. A lot of, you know, pro-America propaganda type stuff. But yeah, World War II documentaries and things were a big excitement back in the day. But I don't know that I heard of The Human Condition. It's great literal masterpiece. Okay, well, I'll take a look. Breeze Feats, hello. 3 movies, late 50s to early 60s, good stuff. Oh, The Human Condition? Oh boy, everybody knows about this stuff and I don't know. Well, golly. And Frankie Della, also anything Joe Abercrombie scribbles is worth a good look. Boy, oh boy, just so many recommendations now. Everybody. Mr. Blue, you only appeared in the opening sequence and the diner scene in Reservoir Dogs. Oh, wait, and the recruitment scene. And I don't think we ever saw Mr. Blue's fate in the movie, because I think he died off camera. Sorry, I know it's not you, Mr. Blue, but when I think of Mr. Blue, Mr. Orange, Mr. Pink, and so on, that's where my mind goes. Read by Nature, hello. Anybody else I missed in the meantime? I want to say hello again. SWD40, hello. And I think that's everyone. If I missed you, please do let yourself be known in the chat, and I'll try to say hi. Moving on, because we do have to move on. Let's talk about Governor Walz. Okay, now Ranting Monkey and Undoomed covered this the other night. I felt kind of jealous I wasn't on there to talk with Undoomed and Monkey, but I had to go to bed because I had to work in the morning. Like, I'm a working person, you see. Exclusive. Vance Bolter blamed Governor Walz for shooting rampage in confession letter, sources say. Now, I think this was first reported in the Star Tribune, which is, as far as I understand it, not a National Enquirer type rag or anything. And police or at least law enforcement officials have, in some way, shape, or form, confirmed some of this. But, moving on, multiple sources with direct knowledge of the investigation confirmed to Alpha News that Bolter's so-called confession letter was intended for Kash Patel, the director of the FBI. Let's go into this. Assassination suspect Vance Bolter wrote a letter in which he blamed Minnesota Governor Tim Walz for the murderous rampage Bolter committed, according to sources. Multiple sources with direct knowledge of the investigation have confirmed to Alpha News that Bolter's so-called confession letter was intended for Kash Patel, the director of the FBI. The handwritten letter was discovered by law enforcement inside the Buick that Bolter purchased just hours after he shot Minnesota Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, and then shot and killed Minnesota legislator and Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark. After an extensive manhunt, the largest in Minnesota state history, Bolter was arrested not far from his home in Green Isle, Minnesota. Bolter has been charged with killing Hortman and her husband Mark and with shooting Hoffman and his wife, who are both recovering. The charging documents indicate that a handwritten note from Dr. Vance Luther Bolter was found and that Bolter confirmed that he was the, quote, shooter at large in Minnesota involved in the two shootings, unquote. The charges also indicate that Bolter bought the Buick and an e-bike for $900 from a man he didn't know at a bus stop in North Minneapolis. Because as we know, when you want to buy an e-bike and a Buick, bus stops. Sure, why not? The man drove Bolter to a U.S. bank where Bolter emptied $2,200 from his account. A surveillance camera at that location recorded Bolter wearing a cowboy hat. An image from that video was released by the FBI as the manhunt to find Bolter was underway. Security camera video from Bolter's neighbor in North Minneapolis, where Bolter rented a room, also shows him wearing a cowboy hat. This is very important information, guys, just so you know. Bolter rented a room in North Minneapolis, but also had a home in Green Isle. Several sources have confirmed that Bolter apparently made the 1-hour trip from North Minneapolis to Green Isle to retrieve a large sum of money that was hidden somewhere in his residence. However, Bolter never made it back inside, and law enforcement had already recovered the money. Okay, how much money was it? It's about as important to me as his cowboy hat, but sure. Walz was not named on a typed copy of Bolter's hit list obtained by Alpha News that was compiled and shared among law enforcement officials soon after Bolter allegedly committed the shootings. The list included the names of dozens of Democratic politicians and abortion facilities. Governor Walz, who recently referred to ICE agents as President Trump's Gestapo and urged Democrats to, quote, bully the SHIT out of Trump, has acknowledged the need for more civil discourse this week. Well, how timely. Alpha News has reached out to the office of Governor Walz for comment. This article will be updated if we receive a response. Well, it's not said so in this article explicitly, but purportedly, for legal reasons, I will say purportedly in one of his written letters, Bolter is said to have stated that he was aiming to take out Amy Klobuchar in order to free up a space that Governor Walz could run for Senate. And I think somewhere in there he intimated that he was given instructions by or had been encouraged by Walz to do such a thing. I don't know. On the one hand, for all the things that I could say about Tim Walz, in what little I know about him as a person, I'd have to say, despite how goofy he is, I don't think he would actually try to get somebody to commit crimes on his behalf. Because at the same time, we're looking at a guy who decided to run around in a cowboy hat, buy a $900 Buick, and shoot 4 innocent people, along with having a hit list pre-made and everything else. I think he's just a Looney Tune. So I don't think Tim Walz has a whole lot to apologize for here. This guy seems like he's a nut job. So unless or until they find documentary evidence that has a connection between these two, aside from a political appointment that took place many years ago, This guy's an absolute nutter. I do find it interesting how some outlets have tried to attach him to being part of the MAGA movement. Not quite sure how that happened. Admittedly, I don't know what goes on in the brain of a Looney Tune like this. But, yeah. So that's still going. And there's a whole bunch of other suspicious things about that day. About the cops rolling up to the Hortman's house before the shooting. And allegedly just standing there while this guy walked into the house and started firing. I don't know. I'm sure, sure. There's that big circle again. I can make it smaller. I have to click on that button. That's so weird. I'm sure more information will come out over time, if we trust the authorities to do so. It is a completely crazy story. And, I honestly, I don't, unless I've said this before, when it comes to things like this, where you have some guy go completely off the rails and shoot up a place, whether it's Las Vegas or this or anything else, I don't particularly care about the motivation. There's nothing about the motivation that's going to make me feel better about it and doesn't somehow justify it. The only reason I would care about the motivation is on an investigatory level, as in, are there other people involved? Either in the planning of this, or are there other people planning to copycat this or somehow join in on it? That's the only point at which I personally care about the motivation or the forces behind it. But as a matter of trying to find some sort of quote-unquote explanation or to find some closure for it as an outside witness, I couldn't care less. Whatever side of the political aisle they supposedly sit upon, it doesn't really matter, because none of those things justify that kind of action. And as far as I know, at this point, he acted alone. So, Assassin the Gray, who is that guy in the circle? That is not Scribe. It's one of my AI scribes. I said, hey AI, take this picture and give me a sort of photographic, realistic thing. Okay, tell you what, I'll update it for you. There you go. You feel better now, Assassin the Gray? There you go. You get your Studio Ghibli scribe light. As we go on to our next article, let's talk about the Supreme Court. This sort of relates to the Twitch stream I did the other day. And in fact, doing the Twitch stream I did the other day was sort of inspired by this news coming out. For guys that missed it, over on my Twitch channel, which I never use, I decided to give it a shot for the sake of doing a little bit more long-form commentary, in the sense that letting something play more than about 5 or 6 seconds before I pause, on the fear that YouTube would zap my stream for content matching or something. As far as I understand it, from what I'm learning of certain streamers over on Twitch, you can just let something play for hours without any consequences befalling you, unless you happen to be Casey Tron and Frogan and Denims versus H3H3. That's a whole other situation. So I felt a little safer letting a podcast interview between Ezra Klein and Sarah McBride go on the other day. I don't know if it's still there. I don't know if it's archived. But if you wanted to, and it's still there, you can go watch my Twitch stream on that. Anyway, that's all beside the point, because the Supreme Court delivered a major blow to transgender rights. And again, I have to ask, as I did on the Twitch stream, can someone please explain to me what is a transgender right as opposed to a right held by anybody else? Because being transgender is as permanent a situation as me saying so in 1 minute and then changing my mind the next. I know that's not true for some people who actually have gender dysphoria and go through a psychological problem. But as far as the law and society is concerned elsewise, that's really all that needs to be done. Anyway, Supreme Court delivers major blow to transgender rights, upholding Tennessee ban on gender-affirming care for minors. You mean chemical and surgical mutilation of children? I know. It's you could say 6 of one thing, half a dozen of the other. But this sugarcoating of the reality of what they are pushing, really gets me. It really, really gets to me. Washington. The Supreme Court on Wednesday upheld Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care for transgender minors, as though they were another species or something, a stunning setback to transgender rights. Yeah, you do not have a right to surgically alter children to make them into a simulation of the opposite gender, or through the work of hormone therapy attempt to do the same. There's no right to that. There was, as far as I can tell, there was never a right to do that in the first place. The justice's 6-3 decision in a case from Tennessee effectively protects from legal challenges many efforts by President Donald Trump's Republican administration and state governments to roll back protections for transgender people. I don't want to protect people that would mutilate children. You see, they always kind of entwine these various different issues together into one judgment call on transgender people. This is about innocent children and doing unnecessary surgical experiments on them at a time in their lives where they are still developing, and trying to freeze them in time. Oh, we have to have puberty blockers, and we have to remove certain parts of their anatomy. It just brings up images of the worst parts of humanity, say from the era of the Human Condition films as they portray. I don't know what to tell you. The decision comes amid a range of other federal and state efforts to regulate the lives of transgender people, to protect children from irreversible surgery and chemical experimentation. Boy, oh boy, PBS, you are really, really carrying the party line on this, aren't you? Regulate the lives of transgender people, including which sports competitions they can join and which bathrooms they can use. Yeah, well, if you're a male, you compete in male sports. If you're a female, you can compete in female sports. If you're pretending to be one or the other, you can't. Pretty simple. In April, President Donald Trump's administration sued Maine for not complying with the government's push to ban transgender athletes in girls' sports. Well, you mean men in girls' sports? The Republican president also has sought to block federal spending on gender-affirming medical care for those under the age of 19, instead promoting talk therapy only to treat young transgender people. Like they're a different species. Here's the thing, and this is the thing that I would be surprised if PBS mentions. Now, as a preamble, I am not a lawyer, I am not a constitutional expert, but I did read a good chunk of the decision by the Supreme Court. And here's what the Supreme Court said. One of the things that was a major sticking point in the argument in this case was whether or not transgender as a category sat in the same place legally as race or age, for example. Is transgender a protected class in the same way that race and age is, say, in Title VI or Title VII or other such things? And the answer was no. And for a very specific reason. There are several different check marks that a protected class has to hit. And it's strict. You have to hit all of them. It's not just best 2 out of 3 or something. You have to hit all of them. And the one that transgenderism will never be able to hit is that the element of your makeup that qualifies you to be in a protected class has to be immutable. As in, it is something that is a part of your natural being, something you have no control over, like your skin color, like your age, like your biological sex. Whereas transgenderism, or whatever you want to call it, it's not immutable. It is in fact the opposite of immutable because it defines mutability. It is something that changes one to another, and because of the standards that we've, created for it, It is as mutable as I feel this way on Tuesday, I feel a different way on Wednesday. And so I can't just decide on any particular day that I now belong or don't belong to a protected class and experience certain privileges over here, but none of those privileges over there, or something like that. That's not how it works. That's not how the Constitution is written. So when it was an argument that somehow transgenderism is something that needs to be protected for the sake of healthcare and so on and so forth, it just doesn't. It doesn't pass the test. And unless there is a severe change in constitutional law, it never will. And especially when it comes down to trying to justify mutilating children when they are still in their development stages. It just doesn't pass muster on a legal level, and as far as I'm concerned, not on a moral level in any way, shape, or form. Let's see, moving on. In addition, the Supreme Court has allowed him to kick transgender service members out of the military, even as court battles continue. The president also signed another order to define the sexes as only male and female. Trump administration has also called for using only therapy, not broader health measures, to treat transgender youths. Well, there'll be time if they want to, as consenting adults, to do to their bodies whatever they wish to do after they've become legal adults and not before. The justices acted a month after the United Kingdom's top court delivered a setback to transgender rights, whatever those are, ruling unanimously that the UK Equality Act means trans women, so men, can be excluded from some groups and single-space sexes such as changing rooms, homeless shelters, swimming areas, and medical or counseling services provided only to women. 5 years ago, the Supreme Court ruled that transgender people, as well as gay and lesbian people, are protected by a landmark federal civil rights law that prohibits sex discrimination in the workplace. That decision is not affected by Wednesday's ruling. Yeah, because these are two different things. Performing unnecessary medical experimentation on non-consenting children for the sake of trying to move them in a virtual way from one gender to another is not the same thing as, oh, you have a lifestyle that is different from me, you're not allowed to work here. Yeah, these are two different things. I don't even know why you brought it up at all. It's completely unrelated. But the justices on Wednesday declined to apply the same sort of analysis the court used in 2020 when it found that, quote, sex plays an unmistakable role, unquote, in employers' decisions to punish transgender people for traits and behavior they otherwise tolerate. What? Declined to apply the same sort of analysis the court used in 20... This has nothing to do with employment opportunities. What? Okay, again, not a lawyer. What kind of complaint is that? These are two completely different issues. There are about 300,000 people between the ages of 13 and 17 and 1.3 million adults who identify as transgender in the United States, according to the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law. Yeah, and you know what could happen tomorrow if all of those people just said out loud, I'm actually the opposite gender or my original gender? Then there would be 0 transgender people in the United States. Because it is a mutable element. And given the trend and fad that transgenderism has become over the last 10, 15 years alone, I would highly question whether all 1.3 million adults and 300,000 minors actually are experiencing gender dysphoria on a psychological level that, especially in the case of the minors, might not work itself out over time and could just be a phase of development. But that aside, when the case was argued in December, then President Joe Biden's Democratic administration and families of transgender adolescents had called on the High Court to strike down the Tennessee ban as unlawful sex discrimination and protect the constitutional rights of vulnerable Americans. You mean like minors that can't make such decisions for themselves and have adults around them mutilating them for life? They argued that the law violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which requires the government to treat similarly situated people the same. Again, what is one of the tests for that, for a protected class? Immutability. Tennessee's law bans puberty blockers and hormone treatment for transgender minors, but allows the same drugs to be used for other purposes. Yes, if you have a necessary and reasonable medical purpose for such things, they can still be used, but not for the purpose of switching genders. That is not medically necessary for a child. Soon after Trump took office, the Justice Department told the court that its position had changed. A major issue in the case was the appropriate level of scrutiny courts could apply to such laws. The lowest level is known as rational basis review, and almost every law looked at that way is ultimately upheld. Indeed, the federal appeals court in Cincinnati that allowed the Tennessee law to be enforced held that lawmakers acted rationally to regulate medical procedures well within their authority. The appeals court reversed a trial court that employed a higher level of review, heightened scrutiny, which applies in cases of sex discrimination. Except this is not a case of sex discrimination. You keep pushing that idea, but it's not. Under this more searching examination, the state must identify an important objective and show that the law helps accomplish it. Well, the only objective I ever saw with this stuff is trying to transmogrify children into something they are not, to please the adults around them. Which is just so... Let's see. JB, bruh, this is gross. Yeah. Frankie Della, a trans kid is like a vegan dog. You know who made that decision, and it wasn't the dog. Yep. Dead man, but I'm told puberty blockers are totally reversible, so it's okay. Yeah, except that, we found out late in the game that that was all a lie, that the research was meddled with by an activist. It's just... Professor R2, if you have read Time to Think, you would understand the monstrous things that are being done to children in service of the trans agenda. Oh, no, I mean, I did a TEDx on this, one that was very difficult to watch, where you had this happy lady on a stage promoting the idea that, we have to do this to children before they hit puberty or else they'll never have a chance to go backwards. Ugh. Abdicast Diabli, voting rights, marriage rights, the right to work were all fights to get rights denied to certain people. Trans rights are a fight to create a niche right for a specific demographic that can change at any moment. I mean, I could, if there were suddenly a special set of rights that only applied to transgender people, I could decide to enjoy those rights one day and just not have to worry about them the next. And then they're not rights, are they? It's just entitlements. It's silly. Faithless, so Munchausen. I am sure there are more than a few cases of living vicariously through your child in this way, or simply having your child as basically a conversation piece at parties. Look at my trans child. Ugh. Read by Nature, Celebrity Parents. Yep, those two. Breeze Feats, Madam Camille Paglia. Bequipped, trans is a cultural fashion. Yeah, there you go. Like I was saying. Conversation piece at parties. Dr. Functional, therefore, that demographic is not valid. Trans does not exist. Experiencing gender dysphoria is something that has been shown to be a thing that can happen in people. Right? And it is not a condition I would wish upon someone. I mean, and again, I'm not saying these are exactly the same thing, but if you believed with all your certainty that your arm is not actually your arm, that your arm is some kind of alien entity attached to your body, What do you do with a person who genuinely believes this? They possess an obviously demonstrably provable delusion. What do you do about this? And they say the only way to cure myself is to cut off my arm. And I'm not making this up. This is a thing that has happened. Whether it's a leg or an arm or something else, or I need to be blinded. There was a story a few years ago about a lady who just felt like she needed to be blinded. She should not be able to see. Her eyes are aliens or something. And she found some doctor willing to cut out her eyeballs. It's the same mechanism, just maybe not with as permanent damage. Well, unless we're talking about children, of course. But yeah, if you are a full-grown adult and you have found that there's no other way to try to ease your mind than to start taking hormones or having surgeries to alter your body in order to feel like you are more yourself and so on and so forth. You know, sitting where I am, I cannot imagine experiencing such a thing. But holy cats, I would hope that there would be several different hoops I would have to jump through as a grown adult before someone would consent to do that to me. You know, I'm libertarian on the subject. If you're a grown adult and that is what you want to do, and you've gone through the necessary checks to make sure you understand the consequences, the long term and everything else, have at it. You know, I do not envy the position someone is in if they feel like they have to do something like that. I won't say I'll ever understand it, but if that's what you want to do, okay. But the same rigor I would never, ever imagine being applied to a child. You know, we don't let children sign lifetime contracts. We don't let them drive a car. We don't let them make the same kind of decisions for themselves that adults do. For a reason. Because they're not ready. They're not smart enough. They don't know. And a child shall lead them. Yeah, well, don't follow that child too far and make sure you have a tether on him first. Anyway, I could go on, but I think you get my drift there. Pecoraro 2. Yes, gender dysphoria is a real mental illness and can be treated without surgery, chemical castration, and cross-sex hormones. Yes, you cannot change your sex, and anyone telling you otherwise is lying. It's true. It's all aesthetic. At the end of the day, at best you can do is just aesthetic. Some people pull off the aesthetic a heck of a lot better than others. That doesn't mean you've changed your gender. As I said on the Twitch stream the other day, there are two elements when it comes to demands from the trans activists. And I'm not even going to say transgender people, because trans activists seem to be a whole different category from just people who have this situation and want to live their lives that way. Trans activists, there's two things that are almost the biggest barriers to trying to convince society to go along with. The first one is, does this rule, this policy, this thing you're moving toward necessitate the involvement of children? That's pretty much a non-starter for most people. And that's what we have here with the Supreme Court case. The second one is any law or policy or mandate or something that requires people to join in on or otherwise supplement someone else's demonstrable delusion about themselves. Right? And again, this isn't necessarily a judgment call on someone's character, because I've known people in my family who are delusional, mainly because of old age. They see things that aren't there, or hear things that aren't actually happening, or they remember things that didn't happen. Right? I don't call someone a bad person for having a problem with understanding reality. No. But I'll tell you what, if you're forcing me through legal process or punishment or coercion or something to have to go along with someone else's delusion to make them happy, no. It's just not going to happen. Compelled speech or restricted speech, no. So if those that otherwise it's like, hey, live your life. If I know you, and I there have been several people in my life who have or are transgender, and I refer to them by the pronouns that they would like because it's just reflexive now. Right? I've told the story of I can't use real names, but I knew him as Jim, and one day he showed up and he said he was Jane. And so it took a little while to adjust, but, I was like, okay, Jane. No skin off my nose. I wasn't pretending that Jane was a woman, and even Jane wouldn't say that he was a woman. But that's what made Jim feel better about himself. So it didn't bug me. It was a willful change of address on my part. But that's because I was fine with it. If somebody comes along and says, my pronouns are this, and you have to say that, and if you say something else, you've misgendered me and you've committed a social sin, like, no, go away. Go away. Leave me alone. You leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. Very libertarian. Last story. I saw this one, and he's not exactly my favorite friend at CNN. Why are these ads? These ads are terrible. They overlay everything. I don't care about. Go away. Anyway, he's not quite Chris Cillizza, but Chris Cillizza and him are pretty buddy-buddy now that they're both independent journalists on Substack. So when I saw this, I thought, let's go over this. MSNBC reject Chuck Todd twists himself into a pretzel to blame Trump for increasing anti-Semitism. Okay, let's think about this for a second. The president that moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, the president whose family members are Jewish. Yes, guys, Donald Trump, anti-Semite. Newly independent NBC News star Chuck Todd has blamed Donald Trump for what he framed as a rise in anti-Semitism on U.S. soil. Yes, because as we know, Donald Trump was totally for the Columbia protests. Remember the Columbia protests? Where all these idiots were screaming Intifada and from the river to the sea. Remember that? Oh yeah, Donald Trump was totally on board with that, by the way. The longtime Meet the Press moderator made the remarks during a talk with ex-CNN reporter and our favorite friend, formerly of CNN, Chris Cillizza. I knew there was a reason I picked this. Snippets of which were posted to social media and the latter's Substack on Monday. Cillizza captioned the clip in question, "Powerful stuff," after letting Todd, 53, make his case. Quote, "I hesitated before, but I do want to say this, which is, I've never experienced any serious anti-Semitic attack before June 16th, 2015, the former MSNBC host who fled the NBC Universal family in January began. Quote, "I never felt my Jewishness was somehow the chief identifier of what I did for a living," unquote. I am completely sincere when I say this. I had no idea Chuck Todd was Jewish. It's almost like such things are an irrelevancy to me. But okay, Chuck Todd is Jewish. All right. The day singled out was when Trump announced his first candidacy with a rally and uproarious speech at Trump Tower. Or you mean talk about the escalator incident? Okay, I admit I do not recall exactly all of what Trump said at that, so do tell. A stern back and forth ensued, with Cillizza quickly clarifying for his Substack viewers at home, "You personally." "Me personally," Todd, who is Jewish, shot back. After June 16th, it unleashed. Okay, again, I feel like I'm going through a TEDx talk. What did Trump say after June after June 16th that caused Chuck Todd to feel attacked? He added how, quote, "it began on the right." Quote, "I've experienced plenty of left-wing anti-Semitism too as well now," Todd continued. but it began with Trump. Not offering specifics. Oh, that's my favorite thing. That's my favorite thing. You guys know from watching TEDx Talks when someone doesn't give a specific example when they say something like that. I love it when that doesn't happen. Not offering specifics, the ex-legacy media journalist went on from there, disclaiming at a point, quote, that Trump did not invent anti-Semitism. Unquote. Well, thank you, Chuck Todd. Boy, because as we all know from Satsu 2 Cents' wisdom, history began in 2016. So if you're saying that Trump did not invent anti-Semitism, that means that it existed beforehand? Wow, okay. I guess there was all that stuff in the Bible. But whatever. But Trump gave a permission slip to people to express their hatred, he said, and that is what happened. When? And I'm being sincere. When did Trump give people a permission slip to hate Jewish people? When? Quote, do I think Donald Trump wanted Jews to be attacked when he ran for president? No, I do not, Todd said. It's kind of, I gotta say, if you don't want Jewish people to be attacked, you make for a terrible anti-Semite. I mean, I guess I'm a terrible anti-Semite because I don't want Jewish people to be attacked. So, wow. So far you have Donald Trump who, without specifics, gave a permission slip to people to feed their hatred. And then he didn't want Jewish people attacked during his presidency. And yet somehow all the anti-Semitism Chuck Todd has ever experienced started with Trump back in 2015. Okay. I'll back up a little bit. This is Chuck Todd talking now. Quote, do I think Donald Trump wanted Jews to be attacked when he ran for president? No, I do not, Todd said. Quote, but his behavior and his permission slip on violence gave others in his party a permission slip or others on that side of the aisle. And I always say June 16th was the moment I thought the rock was lifted, okay? Todd also claimed. Why? Seriously, and I'm being sincere here, what did he say on June 16th that Chuck Todd thinks qualifies as a permission slip to hate Jewish people? Boy, this is the best that senior and experienced veteran journalist Chuck Todd can come up with, just speaking casually. I mean, he knows it down to the day. June 16th, 2015, this was the day that everything fell apart, and yet somehow he can't come up with what happened? Okay, well, apparently the Daily Mails are going to make an attempt. He appeared to be referring to a rise in anti-Jewish sentiment online in recent years and prominent attacks against Jewish people and groups. Okay, and that's because of Trump? On April 13th, a man set fire to the Pennsylvania governor's Josh Shapiro's mansion after telling authorities he harbored hatred towards him because of his position on the war in Gaza. Shapiro had hosted a Passover Seder at the residence the night before. Okay, so I don't know what Shapiro's position on the war on Gaza is. I'm assuming, I'm happy to be corrected, I'm assuming that he's probably on Israel's side. Within weeks, on May 21st, another attacker killed 2 Israeli embassy staff members outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C., as the conflict in the Middle East continues to rage. Yeah, and what was that guy shouting? Was he shouting MAGA, MAGA, MAGA? Or was he shouting Free Palestine? Oh, I think it was the second part there, wasn't it? A federal official said the attack would be investigated as a hate crime. Sure. Earlier this month, another man threw Molotov cocktails at people marching in support of Israeli hostages held by Hamas in Colorado. The case is also being treated as a federal hate crime. And yeah, what was that guy's background? If we're looking at motivations here, or sources of inspiration. Cillizza, who was laid off from CNN in 2022, such a time, said he agreed after joking to Todd, quote, "I didn't know you were Jewish," unquote. Well, hey, Chris Cillizza and I share something in common. It's almost like it was completely irrelevant, and Chuck Todd was pulling as far as he could to make himself a victim of something he couldn't describe. I mean, he's not trying to make himself part of a victim narrative somehow, right? As for Todd, he joined NBC News in 2007 as its political director before being named the chief White House correspondent in 2008. 6 years later, he was promoted to lead Meet the Press and expanded the program by doing regular daytime hours on MSNBC called MTP Daily. It was eventually moved over to the live streaming service NBC News Now. I don't care about Chuck Todd's career. I don't care about his leaving. Okay, so anyway, Chuck Todd, expert journalist, tells us nothing about how he's trying to justify putting himself into a victim narrative against Donald Trump. He was scared of what Donald Trump did on June 16, 2015, everybody. Scared, frightened. He didn't feel safe being Jewish after June 16th, 2015. An element of his makeup that even Chris Cillizza, one of his apparent close friends, had no idea about until that moment. But is really important and so significant that he couldn't even describe what it was that was said. I think NBC laid Chuck Todd off a few years too late. But that's just my thoughts. What are yours? Frankie Della, Orange Man Under the Bed. Pretty much. Assassin of the Gray, how can I blame the Trump for this? Chuck Todd. Abcast Diabli, no one even knew he was Jewish. How unsafe could he have been? I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know the intricacies of every media personality, but even Chris Cillizza didn't know. Of course, to be honest, or to be fair, Chris Cillizza had no idea that Joe Biden was mentally compromised for 5 odd years. So, I mean, it's entirely possible that all the signs were there, but Chris Cillizza just wasn't paying attention. Toot Sweet, I am referring to the media, not a people. What? This is why we can't have nice things. Well, again, Chris Cillizza and Chuck Todd are as much of the media now as I am. They occasionally go online and they speak their mind and read articles other people wrote. And they have a Substack. Okay, they have a Substack. I mean, I have a Substack that I haven't touched in the better part of 2 years. But I mean, I have one. So is possession 9/10 of the professionalism? I have a YouTube channel. I talk about the news. I make commentaries on things. And I have a Substack. Hey, I have all the qualifications of a Chris Cillizza. Yay! Let's see. I'm sorry, who has permission to be violent? Well, I mean, the military, under certain circumstances, law enforcement, under certain circumstances, and apparently anyone who's an anti-Semite, according to Chuck Todd, according to Donald Trump, according to no evidence whatsoever. So, and JB says, Chris Lizard can suck an egg, Scribbles. Yes, he can. I don't know if he does, but I'm sure he has the capacity. But anyway, everybody, those are the stories that jumped out at me. Not literally. Only one jumps out at me on any regular basis. Isn't that right? Wowie, wow, wow. Yeah, and you're jumping at me to be fed. I mean, you can go on strike, but if you go on strike, I'm just not going to feed you. Wowie, wow, wow. Yeah, I know. That's just the rules of the road. Okay, you know, you sing for your supper, and if you're not going to sing, there's no supper. So, are we still on strike? Wowie, wow, wow. See, that's what we call negotiation. Tough love. DogCatFox is still here. His name is still up in lights on the show. DogCatFox and friend. Well, I'm your friend. I treat you like a friend. You're my friend, DogCatFox. Wowie, wow, wow. Yeah, see, that's how it works. Anyway, everybody, that's the show. Hope you enjoyed it for what it was. That was the most talkative DogCatFox has been on any episode of anything ever, I think. I could be mistaken, but for those of you out there who are Scribe Light lore pros, you could tell me otherwise. Speaking of lore pros, it's not even a good segue, but would you like to join the Discord server? Link to the Discord server is in the chat right now. Just click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word will tell me that you actually watched the stream, are not a bot, and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. Today's secret word is wowie wow wow. Just say hello, wowie wow wow, and I'll know that you watched the show. Outside of that, you can find me Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9:05 a.m. Pacific Time, noon 05 p.m. Eastern Time on Midnight's Edge in the morning, talking about movies and box office and entertainment news and all types of craziness, not unlike Danny Boyle and what's her name? Polar? What's her first? I suddenly forgot her first name. Whatever, that lady, Parks and Rec lady, complaining about how terrible people they are and how they made money off of being terrible people, but they're not going to give the money back, of course. That kind of thing. We'll talk about that. Also, Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, you can find me here for TED Excellence, where I take a look at off-brand TED Talks with TEDx Bingo for enlightenment and entertainment. Or just killing some time on a Thursday night. One of the three, you pick one or two or all three. Outside of that, if you haven't already, please leave a like down below and share out this stuff. Also, I forgot to say, I'm simulcasting on X, so if you happen to see this posted on X, please do share it out on X, because who knows, maybe some stranger out on X will find this interesting and subscribe to the channel. And also, if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. Amy Poehler, that was it. I wanted to say like Lacey Poehler or something. I don't know, Lacey Poehler? Sounds like some kind of strange growth you have at a strip club or something. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, link posted at the top of the chat box. Thank you guys so much for your generosity. Very much appreciate it. Everyone, have a good rest of your Saturday, your Sunday, your weekend ahead of you, your week ahead of you as well as your weekend. You're in the middle of the weekend. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.